Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gats and gittens, comic book fans from all over the world, welcome back to Ask Chuck Dixon, where I answer your questions about what I do for a living, my strange occupation as a comic book writer. Let's get right to the questions. We're going to start with Jeremy and Stringfellow Investigate. Jeremy and Stringfellow have a lot of questions, and they're good ones. I have recently read about TV, movie, and some comic writers stating that editors feel that some of their plots are too complicated for audiences or have to be dumbed down. Do you think this is the case? Personally, I feel that fans can handle complicated plots if it's genuine. It's kind of ironic, isn't it, that the major comic book companies profess to be or appear to be seeking a more sophisticated, more hip, more well-educated, more progressive, and with it, audience. And yet they feel they got to dumb the things down. I don't quite understand that. I mean, when I write like mainstream superhero comics, anything from Batman to Alpha Core, I keep in mind a precocious 10-year-old. And you don't dumb things down for a precocious 10-year-old. You got to stay ahead of him, keep his interest. And even when you write things that the reader doesn't understand, that's cool too, because Larry Hama once said, when he was writing the backs of the G.I. Joe cards, when you bought a G.I. Joe, on that little blister card, there was this G.I. Joe file on the back with their name and their specialties and their talents and background and everything else. And Larry would write in all this like really complex military terminology and references. And Hasbro said, maybe you need to dumb this down because kids aren't going to know what these things are. And Larry said, when kids don't know what something is, they assume it's cool. And Hasbro listened to him. And, if you were a kid getting those G.I. Joe toys, that was true. You're looking on the back of this thing and you want to know what a Model 70 Winchester looks like and what is that? So, you never want to write down. You never want to consciously dumb your stuff down. But that might be, a sign of what the current crop of editors at DC and Marvel think of the readers, that they're stupid. Another thing might be the writers are saying that the editors are saying their plots are too complicated. Maybe the editors are saying their plots are too confusing or not very well thought out or engaging. Maybe. I don't know. I've never, in all my years in comics, ever heard of anybody broaching this subject of the stories being too confusing. Now, I have editors who would say, I'm not sure I understand this story, which meant that I had failed and I would have to go back and rewrite to make things clear, because that happened very rarely, because one of my carved in stone tenets for writing comics is clarity. Make things clear. Comics should be easy to read. It's an immediate experience medium. And that doesn't mean dumbing it down. Doesn't mean, using little words. It just means that the story flow and making sure the story elements are clear within the story so that the reader doesn't get lost. Simple things like not having two characters look too similar to one another so that we don't confuse them visually. Making sure that night scenes look like they take place at night and day scenes look like they take place during the day. Just simple things like that, and matters of, geography within the comic, how things are placed. You have to be aware of all these things when you're writing a comic, that the reader, they don't know your story yet. So you've got to present it to them in as clear a way as possible. But yeah, this is the first time I've ever heard, our comics are just too damn smart for readers. Got to make them more stupid. I'm reminded of when John Dahl, director, was making a movie called The Last Seduction for Cinemax, and it was for the Skinemax section, Cinemax After Dark, where they were making basically softcore porn available through pay cable. And the producers in charge of this, they weren't that interested in quality. They were just interested in the amount of skin you could convince your actresses to show off in the movie. And John Dahl had a very good screenplay in Last Seduction. It was a very interesting story, and he worked hard to make it a good movie, to the point where it kind of got out that he was making a good movie. And the Skinemax people came around and said, hey, hold on. Do you have pretensions to art? In other words, are you making a good movie? We didn't ask for a good movie. We asked for a movie with a lot of skin. And Dahl said, no, I'm making the exploitative trash you want me to make. And they said, oh, okay. End result, Last Seduction is a very, very good movie, a very, very good neo-noir movie. And of all of the Cinemax After Dark made for cable productions, The Last Seduction is the only one that still gets regularly re-released on Blu-ray and DVD and all the rest, regularly mentioned in articles about neo-noir of the 90s. So, I mean, so the lesson here is, if you write smart, evocative, engaging entertainment that doesn't insult your readers, it's a good long-term business plan. Dumbing down to your readers, not such a good idea, because that stuff doesn't last, because it's crap. Jeremy again. Currently, it seems writers do not seem to care about building the supporting cast or keeping that cast active. And almost everything I have written by you, your supporting cast exists as fully formed individuals. How is it you can do this and others fail? Well, a supporting cast and keeping them straight and giving them stage time, is a challenge if you have a large cast. But you got to do it. You got to give everybody, a few minutes or a page or two or a mention here and there. You got to give them time to shine so that they seem real and they seem to have a organic interaction with your main characters, and also helps base everything in reality. Spider-Man, just to give you one example, had a large supporting cast, and it rooted the series in a kind of reality. It also raised the stakes. Peter Parker was part of a family. He had family, he had friends, and these scenes were used to build and explore the character of Peter Parker, who is essential to understanding the character of Spider-Man. They're not two different people. And most of the time, Peter Parker is just Peter Parker. He's not running around in the costume, all the time. So the vast majority of his time is spent interacting with these people, worrying about everyday things like, paying Aunt May's doctor bills, or, explaining to Gwen why he didn't make their date the night before, where all those bruises came from, things like that, and Stan was very good at building this cast and making us care about them and everything else. And it was important because it grounded in reality. It gave us characters we could relate to beyond the main character. Now, when they expand the cast today, they just make more Spider-Men. They don't seem to be interested in Peter Parker at all. They just create more characters. That's not an ensemble cast. That's just a series of Xerox copies of your main character. Same thing over with Batman. There are so many superpowered Batman characters, or mass vigilante Batman characters, or revenge-driven Batman characters, that we kind of lose track of what's going on. When I was on Batman, I built in his Bruce Wayne's next door neighbor, a bunch of other stuff like that to make Batman seem like he existed in the real world. I did a lot with Lucius Fox and showing what Bruce Wayne would be like in the boardroom, because he was, the head of Wayne Tech, the head of Wayne Enterprises. He had to fulfill that role while pretending to be an indifferent, spoiled doofus. And I had a lot of fun with those scenes. And it helped, again, build the reality, deepen the universe for these characters and make it seem like something was going on before the comic began and something going on after. That these characters, even if they only appeared in a few panels every few issues, had a life of their own. When I got to do Nightwing, it was really important to me because Dick Grayson was showing up in a new city, that I build a supporting cast around him, from his landlord to some of his neighbors, people he interacted with. And when I wanted to expand the cast further, that's when I decided, well, it wouldn't be cool if Dick Grayson joined the police force. And then we had all those characters introduced. So you had this this world that he lived in, that he moved through. And so it all seemed real, not just, all just a fantasy, just a series of plot development, action. No, it seemed like something real was going on here, that these characters had a life beyond the pages of the comic. Same thing for Robin. I didn't want to do a Robin monthly. They wanted a Robin monthly as soon as we had success with the first Robin miniseries. I said no, because I haven't built a world for Tim Drake. In the first miniseries, he was in France most of the time. He wasn't home. And then we did another one with the Joker, which was very Joker centric. And again, I wasn't really building a cast for him. And they said, well, let's go to a monthly. I said, what would he do in the monthly? I would have to, in the monthly, introduce this whole world for him. And so we did a third miniseries with the idea that in this third miniseries, I would build Tim Drake's world for the monthly, which I did. And then the monthly begins, and we know all about his home life and his friends at school and a girlfriend and everything about his life beyond being Robin. And I thought that was important. And obviously the readers thought it was important too, because they responded to each project positively. And the monthly did very well for a long time. I wrote 100 issues of the monthly, constantly, adding to the supporting cast, adding to the reality, adding to the surrounding environment for Tim Drake and Robin. And basically that's what I'm doing at Rippaverse. This is a whole brand new universe, and we're building from the ground up, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, I really enjoy this world building. Now at DC, and primarily at DC, I was adding on or explaining or further developing concepts that were already in existence. At the Rippaverse, it's all brand new. So I'm getting to create all kinds of things, department store chains and fast food chains, and things like the Schuster scale and the Fawcett Act, stuff like that. So it's really a lot of fun, and it's fun bouncing these ideas off of Eric and the Saskas and Mike Barron, because we're all into the world building thing too, and and we're all working. We have these Zoom summits now and again to compare notes, and we all share each other's writings with each other, so we all understand where we're going, what we're doing, and what we're trying to establish. And little things like in the background of this very picture, the Swan Hotel, obvious nod to Kurt Swan. So cool stuff like that. Jeremy continues with, Racer X was the comic you were writing when I started focusing on writers, creators, which led to Alias. Was Racer X an assignment, or given your like of anime and manga, something you thought you could expand on the mythos? Yeah, Racer X was, I think I wrote 11 issues. It was an assignment from my editor at Now was Kate Llewellyn, and they had gotten the Speed Racer license, and with it, the Racer X license. And she said, would you want to write Racer X? And I said, well, I was never a Speed Racer fan. I don't know much about Racer X, which of course nobody does. He's a mystery. All we know is he's Speed Racer's older brother. And she said, well, we don't want to take an anime or a manga approach to Racer X like we're taking with Speed Racer. You'd be free to do whatever you want with the character. We would like it if he was like a government agent. He was driving, he was a spy, he was all these other things. And I said, well, okay. Could I work with an art team that I'm used to working with, which was Todd Fox and Enrique Villagran? And they said, yeah, sure. So Todd and I and Enrique, we went to work, and it was a lot of fun. It was, basically like a car chase book, like a car centric action story with Racer X traveling all over the world. He even builds a car to escape from a Russian gulag. Crazy stories like that. And for the most part, what I told Todd when we started on this was, I want every issue to be a Burt Reynolds movie, like the Burt Reynolds movie from the '70s, like a car centric, action film with lots of crashes and car stuff. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed working on it. And I got to work with my two buddies, Todd and Speedy Enrique. And if you've ever seen the book, the art's gorgeous. You combine Todd's storytelling muscle, which is prodigious, and then Enrique's finishes. Some of the finishes that Enrique did over Todd's stuff is just beautiful, just jaw-droppingly beautiful. And we even got a cover out of Enrique's brother Ricardo, master painter. So we got a gorgeous cover. So it was fun. It's basically hanging out with my friends, writing a Burt Reynolds movie. Jeremy asks also, have you ever discussed weapons for books with other writers? Not sure if you were all at First Comics at the same time, but I have that dog poker game image in my head. But it's you, Howard Chaykin, Mike Grell, and Timothy Truman discussing magazine capacity and maximum effective range. No, I never had a discussion, and it really wasn't. I was at First. It overlaps a little bit, the Venn diagram. Tim was gone. I think Mike Grell was gone. And Howard Chaykin was gone. Everybody was gone from First by the time I started working for them for that brief, regrettable period. But if I was to have that gun discussion, that fantasy gun discussion, that long car ride where the subject of firearms comes up, I would populate that car or those bar stools with, first of all, Flint Henry. And Flint, if you're listening to this, you're going, "Oh, I don't know anything about guns," because you always say, "I don't know anything about guns." Yeah, but but if you corner Flint or pinch him real hard, he'll start spewing gun knowledge like nobody's business. He'll explain the efficiency or deficits of a boat tail shaped cartridge. Tell you the max velocity of a 7.65 round. He's full of crap on the self-effacing, I don't know anything about guns subject, but he'd be a guy to have to chime in. And also, my buddy Bo Smith. We talk guns all the time. We share gun videos. We have a list of guns that we lust for that we wish we could own, and things like that. And Bo shoots, I shoot. So he'd be a good guy to talk to. Another one, of course, Larry Correia would be great to have sit in the back seat, sharing his knowledge of his own massive personal arsenal and experience with firearms. And he knows his stuff. But the guy who would have to be there, the essential, the one who would make us all look like we don't know a damn thing, like we don't know which end of the gun the bullets come out of, that would be Larry Hama. And he would be the man in that situation. The first time I met Larry, because now Larry never went to cons back in the day, never went to conventions. First time I met Larry was in the Marvel offices, and he asked me to come up for lunch to talk about Conan, and he had never done that. He never invited me for lunch. In fact, the first time I said, "Do you want me to come up for lunch?" He said, "Well, why the F would I want that?" This is why during my acid test period, where Larry was basically beating me up to find out what kind of person I was. So Larry comes into the office, sees me sitting on the couch, and he goes, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Chuck Dixon. You invited me up for lunch." And he goes, "Oh, is that today?" I'm still in the acid test phase. He sits down at his desk. He has a briefcase. Opens the briefcase, and I can see him from where I'm sitting on the office sofa. And in the briefcase is a Three Stooges VHS tape. There's nothing else in it but these two things: a Three Stooges VHS tape and a Colt 45 government model. And he looks at me to see how I'm going to react to this. And I said, "Is that a government model?" And the acid test was over. Larry couldn't do enough for me after that. So he'd be the guy. And I remember once we were at a meeting to discuss a Punisher crossover, and it was Larry and me and another writer who I won't embarrass by naming him. And when we first sat down, Larry turned to me and he says, "What are your three calibers for the Punisher?" And I knew exactly what he meant because I grew up around guns. My dad was a gunsmith, and my dad had taught me this lesson early on: is don't buy a whole bunch of guns and a whole bunch of different calibers, because then you end up with a whole bunch of oddball ammo. And when ammo goes on sale, you don't know what caliber to buy. Just pick three calibers that you're going to use commonly. And so I said, well, for me, it's 223. The round for an M16 or an AR-15, 45 ACP, and 12 gauge, because I loved having Punisher use shotguns. And Larry was like, okay, I'll go with you on the 45 and the 12 gauge. He goes, but I would go to a 308. And of course, Larry was right. 308 is a heavier round for a rifle than a 223. 223 was designed as a non-lethal round. It wasn't supposed to kill you necessarily. It was created to wound enemy soldiers, because wounding an enemy soldier takes 4 soldiers or 5 soldiers off the field rather than one, just by simply killing them, because the 4 guys who have to carry the wounded guy away. Wounded soldiers cause more problems for the enemy than dead soldiers, and that was the thinking behind the 223 round, which is basically just a super powerful 22 round. But Larry was right. 308 was a man stopper, and that's what Punisher would use. He had no interest in wounding people. He was right. I bowed to his judgment. And then Larry turned to the third writer, who embarrassed himself because he didn't know anything about caliber of weapons. He could not enter the discussion. He didn't know what language we were talking. So anyway, those are the guys I would have on my long car ride to the gun range. Hey, if you have subscribed, thank you. You're helping to build this channel. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Hit that button down below and help build an audience, and who will bring in more and more interesting questions to challenge yours truly. Ian Potash. Hi, Chuck. I know you're not big on the multiverse, but DC's stance on canon was that previous Earth stories can be selectively canonized if they're referenced in the current timeline and don't contradict anything current. With your work taking place in the post-crisis timeline, are there any previous gold, silver, or bronze age stories that you consider to be part of your Batman's lore? I never got the whole crisis thing. We would talk about crisis. We would reference crisis at editorial meetings and stuff like that, but I never got it. I never read it. I never read Crisis on Infinite Earths. It all just seemed tedious and confusing to me. It was like a Legion of Superheroes story. Too many characters, most of whom I didn't care about. And, I didn't get it. And luckily, when I went to work at DC, I was under the aegis of Mr. Denny O'Neil, and I don't think he cared about it either. So he saw the Batman universe, his Batman universe, as separate. Earth Bat. It was separate from the rest of the DCU. And the Batman who would appear in Justice League and everything else, that was some other Batman. And that was the unspoken edict. That we're over in our little corner of DC Universe, and we're not engaged in any of that other stuff. And that said, I picked whatever I wanted to use from Golden, Bronze, Silver Age, because I wanted to go back and mine Batman's past without interference from any crises or infinite Earths or parallel universes or any of the rest of it. Because, because we were creating a post-crisis Batman, it gave us a reason to reinvent or reboot some of the stuff from earlier periods, like I did with Firefly, and expanded the role of Killer Moth and things like that. Eventually Calendar Man, others, constantly looking back saying, well, who can we bring back? And Huntress was one of the ones that I wanted to have enter the Batman universe in a big way. She really hadn't been officially made a part of the Bat family until I asked to use her. And there was a little bit of reluctance, and I thought, no, this is a really cool character. I mean, she's a former mafia princess, masked vigilante. I mean, come on. And I knew she'd be slightly unhinged. She'd be a wrecking ball. She would cause complications amongst the Batman cast because of her cavalier attitude toward crime fighting, her use of lethality when it came, push came to shove. And I thought, there's so much grist for stories here with Helena Bertinelli, Huntress. And there you go. I largely ignored the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Oh, Nathan Hill. Artists, inkers, colorists, letterers, etc. have a page rate depending on their skill level, experience. Do comic writers have a page rate? If so, what's your page rate? Yeah, comic writers have a page rate. We are paid, per page for what we do, much like the artists, colorists, letterers, all the rest. I'm not going to tell you my page rates because I don't know. I don't like telling. It's kind of everybody keeps their page rates secret. Sometimes the companies even keep their page rates secret from each other. I remember, this is a great page rate story. We had been at a Bat Summit, and I hope it's okay for all the parties involved for me to tell this story. we were at a Bat Summit, and came back to the DC offices. Basically showed up there to tie up some loose ends, make our goodbyes, and depart for our homes. And we were in Scott Peterson and Jordan Gorfinkel's office, and Graham Nolan glanced down at the inbox on, I think, Gorf's desk and saw a voucher, an invoice from a penciler. And he looked at it, and he's like, well, what's this? This guy's making more per page than me. And the two editors looked at each other, and it's like, well, that's a special rate. That's a special rate for him. And Graham's like, I was told I was making maximum rate at DC Comics. And he's, well, you're making the highest page rate. And he goes, well, then how is this guy's page rate higher? And well, it's a special rate. It's kind of like medium and jumbo olives, right? So that was it. Graham took that voucher and went up to the 7th floor. I don't know who he talked to. I assume he went all the way up to Paul Levitz. And he came back with a special rate matching the other guy's rate. So page rate raises were kind of willy-nilly. They would just tell you one day, hey, you're making another $25 a page or whatever, as you prove your reliability and the rest of it. But yeah, art writers are paid by the page, not the word, as some writers would lead you to believe, by their writing. So there you go. There's something on page rates. I probably have more to say on it, but I can't think of the other stories. There's many page rate stories in the Naked City. Samwise, I just picked up what I think was the first issue of your run on Detective, number 644. Yes, it is. In the story, you have an electricity-themed villain named Galvin, just like the recent Alpha Core number 1. Was this an intentional reference? You can just say yes, even if you simply forgot. No one would blame you with how many comics you've written over the years. No, the Ripperverse Galvin is, he was named Galvin for a purpose. Obviously, electricity, Galvin, galvanizing. And since Galvin is like a given name, you can be named Galvin. You can have the last name Galvin. You can have the first name Galvin. It's not really a copyrightable or trademark name. He was one of 2 electric villains in my first run. Electrocutioner 3 was the other, and but yeah, it was intentional. I did remember. Hey, whoa! Twin spin. Comes another question from Samwise. When Rippaverse makes enough money to buy out DC, would you write some more Nightwing? I just finished your killer run, but I want more. Damn it. Yes. When that happens. I'm not saying if. When that happens, I will come back and write more Nightwing, especially if Mr. McDaniel will come back and draw them for me. That would be a Team Supreme reunited. But yeah, I do it. I had a lot of fun writing Nightwing. And writing it under different conditions without the restrictions, current restrictions, I should say. I had no restrictions when I was writing Nightwing in the 90s. I was allowed to go crazy. Not because I didn't take advantage, obviously, but I was allowed to do whatever I wanted, within reason. And under the Rippaverse, yeah, I'd have that creative freedom again. Craig Sarton, which situation do you think is more challenging, to write for a sprawling universe crammed with heroes, or a universe that is focused on one hero with a few heroes or sidekicks? It's a toss-up. Both have their challenges. Yes, you've got to, in a big ensemble book, you got to write a whole bunch of characters. You got to give them screen time. You got to give them time on stage. You have to explore them. You can't forget them, because every character in your ensemble is someone's favorite character. And you'll get letters or emails or Twitters or tweets or whatever if you don't feature their character every once in a while. So you got to think about that. But the other thing you have to rely on is if you get to the end of your 22-page story and you have 2 pages left over, you can always go back and have a scene with, like a cut scene, deleted scene with some of your cast members. And of course, it has to work in organically to the story and make sense. But that's one of the beauties of a large ensemble cast, is you have a lot of characters to play with and all these endless interactions. And, it can be a whole lot of fun. And now on the flip side, writing about one character who is basically the sole character in the story, and as he moves from story to story, you might pick up an ensemble cast for that story and then lose them in the next. That's cool too, because you're concentrating everything on that one guy. Now, what I see happening in a lot of current entertainment is you'll have your solo character, usually male, and then they'll introduce 2 or 3 female characters who basically take over the action of the story. And you see this over and over and over again now, because the writers really don't want to write about, the macho lead. They want to write about these new characters that they've made up, who more closely resemble their worldview or represent their worldview. So, that's a whole new element to this. The writer who doesn't want to write the character they've been assigned to write. But, that was never me. If I was assigned to write a character, first of all, I would only accept an assignment if I understood or, had a liking for or was conversant with the character being assigned. If I was assigned a character I simply didn't care about or had no interest in or didn't think was, worth the time for me, or I wouldn't have done as good a job on, because I'm not a fan. I wouldn't, if I was assigned a Harry Potter comic, as seductive as that would be because of the money to be made, I would probably say no, because I'm just, I don't hate Harry Potter. I'm just not that into Harry Potter. I would have nothing to bring to the party, whereas someone who was more conversant with the character would. And that's the way it used to be. But now it's like, I don't feel like writing Captain Potato Salad, so I'm going to make the story all about his girlfriend and her mom. So, you got to think about that. You got to think about what your audience wants, not what you want. And if your audience wants Captain Potato Salad fighting crime, being a tough guy, and being cool, then you got to bring them that, not introduce new ancillary characters who basically steal his limelight. Mike Ortego, will there ever be a way to get crowdfunded comics at a cheaper price? The price of the book is okay, I suppose, but after shipping and tax, you end up paying around $40 for a comic that is about half the size of your average trade paperback graphic novel. Not complaining, just wondering. Well, this is a concern because crowdfunding is basically fan service. I mean, you're reaching out to your fans saying, look, if you want to see more work by me, you got to support me. So the most diehard fans are supporting. And yeah, $40 is a lot. That's why so many of these crowdfunding campaigns, they try to, throw in more stuff, stretch goals and stuff like that. So, you buy your comic book, but, when the box comes, it's the Gemini box comes, it's maybe got a t-shirt and keychain, poster and prints and postcards and, miniatures, whatever thrown in there to make it feel like you got more of a deal. And anytime I've done a crowdfunder and gotten that box, I'm like, that's pretty cool. It's like Christmas in August or whenever it arrives. And but yeah, it's a high price point. And for a while it was attractive because you're buying a low print item, which will over time gain in value as a collector's item, true collector's item, because it's a low print. It's not many of these, and you can sell it down the line for what you paid for it or more. This is becoming not so true as some crowdfunding efforts. I believe Brian Pulido does really, really good numbers, big numbers. And Rippaverse is doing really, really big numbers for what are essentially trade paperbacks. They're doing like mid-range numbers for periodical comics in a trade. And I would argue, you get your value there. But the crowdfunding thing grew out of the dissatisfaction of readers and a whole bunch of underemployed comic creators. And, and the crowdfunding comics serve those dissatisfied readers. And in some cases, with your boy Zach and Eric, they were dissatisfied readers who wanted to create comics they wanted to read. And so this is like, I see crowdfunding as a necessary next step toward where we're going. Where are we going? I don't know. Is it the formation of a new comic book company, a new distribution system, all the rest of it? I think so. I really do. Because, these comic companies, these crowdfunders are starting to move into digital, which gives them a global base. And that's something we're trying to do at SpinRack, which is move some of these crowdfunded projects into digital, make them more accessible, make them more affordable. But I know from what Eric has told me that, his plans are that crowdfunding is only the beginning. He wants to move more toward legitimate publication, the like a publishing company and distribution system that's an alternative and would welcome other creators under that umbrella. And I think that's where we're going, to a like an alternative subscription program, which would lower the price because the publishers would know in advance how many copies to print. The thing you don't want to do is print a whole bunch of books and hope you sell them. And that's why so many crowdfunding outfits, they're asking you for money for a project that isn't completed yet. I mean, Graham Nolan, he can't guess how many comics to print and then hope he sells them all. He just can't do that. He's a one-man operation, well, two-person operation. Graham and Julie, his wife, basically run Compass Comics, and they work very hard at it. but they can't take this risk of publishing thousands of copies that aren't going to sell to anyone. And so he has to know how many to print. So you've got to wait until he's done. And he's as reliable as clockwork. If Graham says it's going to be there, your comics is going to be in your hands on February 15th. It'll be there on February 15th. But Eric is able, because of his large fan base and the large amount of money that he's raised so far, he's able to go to print beforehand. And, you might eat some unsold copies. So far, I think everything's selling out from where I stand on Rippaverse. So it's a different business model. It's evolving. It's changing. And you will see it adjust to the needs of the market and everything else. Because trust me, all of us in the crowdfunding space would love to get all of our work out to a wider audience, to make it more affordable, to get it out to a wider audience, and more importantly, a global audience. Because that's another problem with crowdfunding is, a lot of people overseas, with shipping and everything else, they can't afford it. It really becomes unaffordable if you're living in Australia or Bulgaria to buy an American crowdfunding comic, because the shipping is crazy. So, we're seeing it's a fascinating time to be in comics, to be as a fan and as a pro, as a consumer and as a producer, because things are changing. Much like streaming changed the entertainment business, crowdfunding is changing the comic book business. Once again, a pet peeve from me, unsolicited. Nobody asked me this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I've complained about this very subject before. I'm going to complain again because I have more reasons. So I'm at the Publix and looking at the magazine rack, which there aren't any magazines anymore. It's all these, the Life of Elvis or James Bond, 75 years, whatever. So I see this very attractive cover, the story of Batman. I got to buy this thing. I'm going to take a look. So I leaf through it and I see exactly what I thought I was going to see, but I thought, okay, pretty cool. I buy it, and it's the usual. It's a pretty well written history of Batman, going all the way back, and little behind the scenes essays about shows, movies, about Bob Kane, blah blah blah, and the movies, of course, and but the thing that irks me is you got like this. I'm holding it in my hands now. Let me see. How long is this thing? This is like 100-page magazine, and it's filled with pictures of Adam West and George Clooney, and it has a few comic panels here and there, a couple of covers, to basically remind you that Batman came from comic books. But there's no actual comics. In a 100-page book, no ads, there's no comics. It's published by Warner's. Why wouldn't you put some comics in there? Now, a number of years ago, more than 10 years ago, Scott Beatty wrote a whole bunch of 2-page origins, like recap origins for the Batman universe. And maybe others, I'm not sure. I only saw the ones for Batman. And, Batman, Robin, different villains, and told their origin stories in 2 pages. It was like a 101. It was like a recap for new readers. And they were drawn by Eduardo Barreto and, Garcia Lopez and Graham Nolan. I mean, it was all drawn by top talent. These things are really attractive. And because it's Scott Beatty, they're well written and well researched and engaging and fun, even though they're only 2 pages long. Why didn't they throw a few of them in here? There was room to say, hey, there's Batman comics. There's not even an ad for current Batman comics. There is nothing in these 100 pages to remind you that there's a long history of Batman comics, and that Batman comics are still in publication. And there's a huge library of trade paperbacks and hardcovers and omnibuy and all the rest of it. Why? Why do they always do this? that they have this perfect vehicle. And looking at the magazine rack at my local Publix, there were only 3 copies of this there, which means, other copies sold. I mean, the magazine jobber didn't drop off 3 copies. He dropped off 20 copies. So this magazine moved at my local Publix and probably reached a whole lot of people. Maybe this thing sold 100,000 copies, which is a whole lot more than most comics sell, a whole lot more than 99% of comics sell. And that would have been 100,000 people who are being reminded that comic books still exist, that there are still Batman comics. You can still buy them. This is what they look like. This is how cool they are. They're really cool. I would have produced a special 5-page story. I would have got my top talent to do a special 5-page Batman story just to show you how freaking awesome Batman is in comic book form. And if even 5% of those that picked up the magazine checked out a Batman comic, that's 5,000 new readers by my math. So why don't they do this? It just seems stupid and frustrating. And I promise not to bring it up anymore. Hey, do you like free comic books? Who doesn't like free comic books? Well, I'm here to offer you free comics. I do a series of Medal of Honor. I think I've done like 20 of them now. Medal of Honor comics for the Association for the United States Army. And they're 8-page stories, each telling about the story of a Medal of Honor winner, America's highest military honor. And every one of these stories is jaw-droppingly amazing. These men and women were extraordinary. Their sacrifice, their courage, and all the rest. And these aren't, cheap jack gimme comics. These are, I wrote them, and we got some terrific artists. Andrew Paquette, PJ Holden, Wayne Van Zant, Jeff Isherwood, and many others doing exemplary work on these 8-page war stories. And they're deserving of your attention. You can read them free at ausa.org/medal-honor-graphic-novels. I'll include the link below. Don't worry about that. But check them out. And like I said, they're absolutely free. Why wouldn't you want to read them? And we are doing more. I just completed 2 scripts recently. They're, again, just jaw drop. Check out the Ray Benavides story. I mean, I can't believe this guy lived through the experiences depicted on those 8 pages. Hey, if you have questions, suggestions, pictures of dogs and cats, and if you have a controversy that you need my advice on or viewpoint on, please contact me at brunobookstore@gmail.com. brunobookstore@gmail.com. It is your most reliable way of reaching me at brunobookstore@gmail.com. That's it for me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for liking. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for sharing. And thanks for those awesome questions.